think we're actually live right now, but that's the weird thing about the way when we do it this way with the Zoom, we are good. We are
Okay.
good. Yes, there's that 30-second delay, but now we are good. So welcome, everybody. Welcome out to Monday night. Thank you. Thank you very much for, taking time to join us. I know there's no Monday Night Football, right? There's basketball games going on, but nobody really is paying attention to that stuff right now. You want to watch us, and I appreciate you for that. It definitely means a lot. And in case you noticed, we got rid of John for tonight, and we brought in the illustrious Mike Walter.
Thank you very much. I'll stand in for John anytime.
There we go. We definitely appreciate that. But first off, I do want to mention a couple things real quick here. We definitely want to make mention to our sponsors, because without them, tonight just would not be cool. Like, it would just be kind of really boring. We probably wouldn't be doing this. We'd be like, I don't know, sleeping. But definitely want to give a big shout out to DJ Event Planner. They are one of our cool guys. They come along. I personally use them, and it helps my business so much. I was one of those guys that was forever in a day, waited. I was doing Word documents, and I would send them PDFs, and they would fill it out. We'd sit down in a meeting. I started using Event Planner, and I don't know why I waited so long. I really don't.
When did you finally start using?
2020.
Oh, okay. So you're at least a couple of years. Yeah. I think it's been 12 or 13 years for us. And I don't know if that made me an early adopter or not, but I swear by it. It's the greatest service ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just all the customization, people are like, oh, it looks this or it looks that. No, there's lots of power in what it does. And then that's why it starts as kind of that blankness.
Right.
And you make it look the way you need it to make it look. So definitely check them out. And then there's some other sponsors we got down in the description. So give them some love. Tell them you heard about them from DJNTV. We very much appreciate it. So on that note, let's move on, because this is a topic tonight that I think is on everybody's brain in some form or fashion. And if you're just starting out and it's not on your brain, take some notes, put it in the ground, and then dig it up in 10 years, because this is going to be some stuff that I guarantee is going to help you long down the road. But let's go ahead and kind of start where this came from. So we got talking, Cubby, John, and I think it was last week or maybe a week before, and we referenced something we heard Robbie Britton say. And if you guys don't know Robbie Britton, he's a DJ down in Greenville, Tennessee, and he posted online that where he had talked to a bride and had shared, I'm not sure exactly how it came about, but shared that he had been in business for about 30 years. Prior to that, the conversation was going great. When that happened, gone. And so it suddenly brought up this idea of, being the old guy and how that needs to potentially be handled, right? And so in that conversation, obviously we brought Mike in. If you were not familiar, Mike and Todd Powers you said 2 different times, right? Midwest DJs
Yes,
Live.
we presented it at DJ Times, and then again at Midwest DJs Live. I think we called it Forever Young, Staying Relevant as You Age in This Industry, something like that. Yeah, it was a very well received seminar, and I was super impressed with Todd. He did a great job.
Yeah, the give and take you both had throughout that, I remember being great. A couple of products you even threw out, I use every day now. So too bad you didn't have product endorsement through them, but
That's right.
I will say it's definitely great. So we're going to get into that a little bit tonight. I encourage you to throw some stuff into the chat, make use of that. That's really what we're going to be watching. So if this is being picked up on Facebook or one of those other places, be aware that I'm not watching those questions. So make sure you send them over on YouTube so that we can be familiar with exactly where we need to be for that. Okay. So without further ado, let's start talking about what are some things that you do, Mike, when you're trying to combat that question, right? Because we all get it at some point, some form or fashion. The question that Robbie dealt with, which is, how long have you been doing this?
I don't know that brides asked that question. I'm trying to think of the last time I was asked that question directly. But yeah, I mean, I think where Robbie went wrong there was he was too truthful. I would never lie about my age, and I would never lie about my experience, but I also I speak a little bit more in like code or not as clear. Like I'll say I've got decades of experience. That's a vague way of saying. And as I was sharing with you guys before we went live, This year is my company's 30th anniversary, and we're not doing anything to promote that or celebrate it publicly or anything else, because I think that tells a young bride how old we are. You know, if you're 31 years old, why do you want to book a company that's been around 1 year less than your age? So, yeah, I talked about that in the seminar with Todd. You can be vague sometimes and just say, yeah, I've been in this business for decades, got a lot of experience.
I think what it hit me. So I haven't hit the 30-year mark, but I've been doing this in some form or fashion now for 27, I think it's been. And so I had a couple who actually just asked me. Now, fortunately, we were in the planning meeting stage of it. So it was like, we were just 2 years out or 2 months
Right.
out.
So she had you
And
booked already. So this
Yeah,
is
you
yeah,
get
yeah,
some
I was
product.
booked. This was a good.
right.
So and so we were just sitting, we were talking, and they're like, talking about how detailed I am and something like, by the way, how long have you been doing this? And I go, it's been, next year it'll be 27 years or something like that. And they both went, because they were 25 and 26.
Right.
So I was doing it longer than they've been alive. So that was like I'm glad we had that conversation then.
Yeah, every once in a while when I meet with a couple in the planning stages, and we start talking about, well, what's the demographics going to be at your wedding, I've had couples say to me, oh, we're going to have a bunch of young people and then older people in their 50s and 60s. And the first time that happened, I kind of like stiffened up and I was like, oh, what do you mean older? But I shut up. And to this day now, I shut up in those situations because these people aren't looking to insult me. In a way, that's a compliment. They don't realize they're talking to somebody in their mid 50s, or else they wouldn't say that. So I just go, I shut up and I go, I pat myself on the back and I go, you fooled another one, you know?
So
I
Cubby, I was gonna say, exactly, what's some of the things that you've had to deal with or ran into with that?
I like to talk about the number of events that I've done. I've done over 1,500 events. And then they can't really put an age on it because, like, well, how many weddings do you do a year? And I'm like, well, between 55 and 60, or then they have to really quickly do math or whatever. So I like to tend, and I'm like, it's just not weddings, but I do all sorts of corporate events and, things of that nature. So I like to say more on I've done this many events, not to inflate it or balloon it, but just keep it in a realistic. That way I'm not really showing my age or whatever. Just this is the number of events that I've done. And that can kind of calm their nerves. Yeah, he's got enough experience. He's done over 1,000 weddings or whatever, versus, well, I've been doing it for this many years.
And I think you just hit on a good point. I mean, this is not exactly related to the age question, but oftentimes, that question might get thrown out. And, somebody who does 50 or 60 events in a year can rack up, as much experience as somebody who does 20 years of two, in a year, right? So like it is really going to be based upon more about the number of events that you're doing. And that should be what's more important to your client when they're really kind of digging into that question of how long have you done it? So let's kind of shift a little bit then, Mike, because you kind of open the door to, they don't think you're as old as you are, which is awesome. So what are some of those daily things that you start to work through to keep yourself not looking that age that they think you are?
Well, I think first and foremost, fitness is so critical. I know the times in my life where I put a couple of extra pounds on. I look in the mirror and I go, yeah, Mike, you're starting to look your age. So, I'm down in my basement right now. If you could see over here to my right, there's a life cycle and a workbench. And these are the tools I use to keep myself in shape. And I do that for a number of different reasons. I want to live as long as possible. So my overall health is important. I join my friend Marcello on the beach from time to time, and I like to try to not look like, the before model when I'm next to him on the beach. But part of it also is I understand that it is helping me get booked because clients just don't realize how old I am. I got lucky with the hair. I don't know how I held on to my hair. My older brother lost his hair years and years ago, so I just got some freakish DNA that I've held onto the hair. But everything else I think is within my power to control.
I will say something when you're talking about the fitness and diet obviously works into that. And I think, as DJs, sometimes we get that stuck in that late night, right? We're driving home, we're hitting the burger joint that's still open or a Taco Bell or something, right? Just because that's what's open. And obviously in the end, that's not what's going to be good for you. But something you did in January, I'll be honest, and I wanted to tell you about this, and I was going to send you a private message, but we'll do it here for everybody. Something you did in January challenged myself. You and your wife opted to do dry January. And so kind of walk through those that haven't seen your posts about that. What was really kind of what led to just the idea of doing that?
Yeah, listen, I like a drink. I wish alcohol didn't taste as good and make me feel so good, but it does. But I also understand alcohol is nothing but empty calories. If you have a couple of drinks at night, you're probably less inclined to wake up early the next morning and feel chipper and want to get down here and work out and do an extra 15. So I went going into this year, beginning of 2023. I just said I'm going to do a dry January, and my wife was very supportive, and she jumped on with me, and we actually made it to February 3rd. We didn't have our first drink until Friday night. We went out to see actually Jerry Seinfeld in the city, and talk about an old guy who's keeping it together and staying relevant. He crushed it. But that was our first cocktails of the new year. So yeah, and listen, I'm going to go back. I already have. I got some friends over Saturday and had some drinks, but I want to be cognizant, and I want to remember how great I felt in the month of January not having any cocktails.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And we're not talking here that you shouldn't drink, or that your choices of what you decide to consume and that kind of thing, but rather, it does have an impact on how you feel. And just as Mike said, if you're having a bunch at night, that next morning when you should maybe get up and do something fitness related, it's going to be a little bit of a drag to try and get there. But that idea that you did, it challenged me to try. I'm doing February. I figured,
Nice.
I'm
Pick
going
the
to try for
shortest
the
month.
short
Way
month.
to go.
Exactly. Don't give away all my secrets.
I read something recently. There was the New York Times had an article about dry. I didn't realize dry January was such a big deal. They actually interviewed some bar owners in the city who are negatively affected by January is their slowest month, and they blame it. But they also introduced a term called one drink January, which is if you happen to fall off the wagon, and you can call this in February, don't give up then. Like if there's one night where you're like, oh, I've just had the worst day in the world, I have to have a drink. Okay, well then have your drink and then go, okay, now I'm back to not drinking for the rest of the month. Instead of saying, well, I blew it, I had the drink, now I can drink all month. So hopefully you make it. Hopefully you show some willpower and make it to March 1st. But if you don't, then have a one drink February.
Yeah, I'm hopefully trying to be careful with it too. I say we pick the easiest month, right? Because it's the shortest, but it's the Super Bowl month.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Listen,
because
I'm a
I told
huge
my wife,
football fan, and I usually sit here watching my games with a couple beers. I made it through all the playoffs without having anything. I didn't really miss it that much.
And that's Cowboys make you drink too. So
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yeah. When
I'm a Niners fan. So.
Cowboys. Well, you guys made it one more week than I did.
Yeah.
but I think it's a good idea. Like being cognizant of your health and the way that you're going is going to be making you feel better. Now, let's kind of shift to something that might be kind of in that same vein, because one of the things that you and Todd both talked about was skincare and some of the things that we do to try and combat.
Who is that?
It's all right. I was like, I thought somebody coughed and I realized it was the dog. So, but some of the things that you're doing for skincare to really kind of help yourself, keep from looking at the aging piece.
Yeah. So I use moisturizer every day. I have since I think my 20s. I think that certainly helps. And I also use a product every once in a while, not every day, because it is a little, it makes your skin kind of tight. I showed it. Did you buy all as the product?
I didn't do that. I did the lotion.
But I find it really helps with with the laugh lines and the forehead and everything else. And just helps keep the skin a little clearer. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question that I would ask, and I'm going to ask this more for myself, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my face, so that some of you can see it here. But do you think it's a good idea for somebody who is starting to show some of those wisdom hairs to color them?
You asking me or Andy?
Well, I'm going to guess that Andy doesn't. definitely doesn't color, but do you think but for someone like me, do you think that would be a good option to go
I
down that path?
rarely, I rarely see hair color that looks good. Usually when I see hair, now maybe that's because the good ones I don't notice. But usually when I see somebody who has colored their hair, I go, oh, it doesn't really look very good. It looks obviously colored. Um, I never grow a beard except for when I have some time off in between events because mine comes in white. I'm lucky I got the hair. It doesn't come in. I don't color the hair, but my beard comes in, Andy, as white and as light as yours. So I usually don't, unless I have like a couple of weeks off, maybe around the holidays, and I just don't feel like shaving. But that's another thing. Like I just feel like I look younger when I'm clean shaven.
Okay. So that might be something to kind of think about is, even if you have some of the gray happening up top, to kind of look at some other ways that you can carry it or style it or do different things to kind of combat that. I mean, you could always do the Mr. Clean, I guess.
Yeah.
So so Andy, I want to switch over to you a little bit. What are some of the things that you personally are doing to keep yourself relevant as that young guy?
I try not to. I try to dress a little bit younger. During my events. I don't. I try not to try not to age. I always have like a pair of nice. In my market, being a former professional baseball mascot, it's real easy to use it to lean on that Cubby as marketing. So I'm okay to wear sneakers. They've seen me in sneakers. So, but I only wear like the best. They're never worn outside, strictly for the show, just for the event or whatever. And then just try to stay like with my dress a little bit younger looking. So I'm not looking at it like your grandpa's DJing your prom or something like that.
So I'm going to throw this out to both of you because I feel like in one area that is where I am probably the most challenged. Okay, when it comes to dressing, because not that I can't find it, but I grew up in the country. I grew up on the family of farmer. My dad was older. Like we didn't go out for fashion stuff. In fact, my dad, the only time I ever saw him wear a tie was my college graduation and my Eagle Scout award. That was pretty much the only time I saw my dad ever dressed in a tie, and it was a clip on, right? So, when it comes to those kind of things, I kind of feel like I struggle as far as picking out what's good. Where do the two of you, you've kind of both referenced this, where do the two of you look for that inspiration?
Mike, you always look great. I'll let you start.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always enjoyed fashion. I've always tried to stay on kind of cutting edge or whatever, and have my own personal style when it comes to fashion. Just last night was one example of where I look for fashion. I watch award shows all the time, and I figure these people, these men and women, are being, dressed by people who are in the know as far as fashion and everything else, and I get a lot of ideas from that. I live close enough to New York City that I see the billboards and I see the ads and things like that. But also staying in touch with a lot of DJs who I think, the Rob Ferrays of this world, who Roman Zandy, who is an incredibly fashionable guy. I'll see something that they're wearing and I'll go, oh, I think I could look good in that. But everybody's got their own personal style. One thing I've learned is not to try to be somebody I'm not. Like I tried to rock a bow tie for a while and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't me. So don't necessarily just steal from other people, but see if it works for you.
I think sometimes that comfort level is a big play to what you mentioned, like with a bow tie or something like that. It could be the most fashionable piece, but if you don't feel comfortable in it, like if it just you feel like you stick out even though you don't, it can quickly be one of those pieces that creates a problem or a hindrance for you more than if you had just rocked what you were doing before.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, you said open collar before. I think open collar is becoming very acceptable. I don't wear open collar to my weddings too often, but from time to time I do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's as long as you have a stylish jacket, stylish shirt, that type of thing. I think the open collar look can be fine.
Now, is there anything that either of you do to alter the look once you get there. So what I mean by that is, you've gone, you set up, you decide, like, for example, Mike, you mentioned you typically don't go open collar. Like if, so you've got your tie, you've got everything, and you kind of look around and you realize that I'm one of 3 people wearing a tie that day. Does that change what you do? Or you say, I'm here, I've got it, I'm rocking it?
It's funny. I always let the groom lead. So if the groom still has his tie on, I still have my tie on. Once the groom takes his tie off, then I feel comfortable enough that I can take my tie off. Same thing with jacket. If the groom keeps his jacket on the whole party, which they rarely do, then I'm keeping it on. So I'm just constantly keeping an eye on the groom and letting him set the tone for what formal is at that party.
And if the groom's untucked and falling down drunk, oh no.
I won't get, yeah, I don't go anything less than take the tie off, go open collar.
It was
You were
pure
making a joke.
sarcasm.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure I wasn't
Right.
making sure nobody was thinking I was being serious there. Cubby, what about you? Like, is there certain things, do you take certain cues from other people, or where do you go for your direction?
I'm an open collar guy only because I'm a little bit of a bigger guy. So sometimes I feel when I wear a necktie, I'm kind of bullfrogish, like I got a fat neck. So I'm an open collar guy, but very nice dress shirts. I like to buy a lot of Robert Graham prints, match them with a jacket and a pair of pants. And then we've talked about this a couple different shows ago. When the mixing starts, or when the dance party starts, I will take off my jacket, and I've got a Cubs jersey. It says DJ Cubby on the back. And I wear that when I mix, and it just goes with my brand, and I've never had anybody complain about it.
And that is one of the things, I mean, that we do have to think about. I mean, as we're talking about this and talking about the way things change and the ways to make yourself, not be that old guy, if you're doing things, that are working for you, you've established your brand, you've established who you are. Not saying you don't always start to be cognizant of what's happening, but it does give you some leeway to say, you know what, I might not have to completely change my fashion, right? The gigs are coming in. I've got I've got the bookings, my calendar's full, right? I don't want to go the opposite and just go, well, I don't care about anything. But it's maybe not as worrisome as you might be thinking it is prior.
Right. Yeah. I'm not starting out worried about somebody to be like, oh, wow, look at that guy. He's wearing that. I'd never wear a hat. I never, because I've seen some of my market hat on sideways, stuff like that. It's just not my style. But I will, but only after all the formals are done. Anytime that pictures, if I do a bouquet garter, I'll keep it on. But those are trending out so bad that, usually throughout the evening, I'm not really doing a bouquet or garter. So
I personally get into a habit of, am I in MC mode or am I in DJ mode? Right. So if I'm in MC mode, the jacket's on, the tie gets straightened back up, like I'm out there and I'm doing my thing. If I am into DJ mode and I'm mixing and it's that portion of the party, right? The formalities are done, the jacket's off, the sleeves rolled up, and the button is undone. So it's not choking me there. The tie isn't necessarily loosened unless we're in a hot environment and everybody's tie is gone. But otherwise, it's just enough to kind of give me that breath of fresh air and kind of more freedom of movement. So,
and that's actually a very fashionable look. Michael Bublé rocks that all the time. I see Michael Bublé with the tie, but it's pulled down a slight, and the first button is open on the top. That's, that can be an acceptable fashionable look.
So what are some of the other things that you, or let's kind of shift gears, right? We know the things that you're currently doing and you kind of established. Are there things that those that are on your company and with your group, are there certain things, I don't want to say that you tell them to do because that's kind of the wrong idea, but are there ways that you, in your trainings, that you kind of help them along to keep them in that young frame of mind?
Well, keep in mind, in my company, everyone's younger than me. Some of them are slightly younger than me. Some of them are significantly younger than me. I mean, I trained a couple people last year. One guy he's not turning 21 till later this year. Two of the other guys are in their mid-20s. So they're significantly younger. And PS, I think that's one of the secrets for me staying younger is hanging around with a bunch of people that are half my age and, and them keeping me fresh and on top of things. But the older DJs that I have on staff, the guys that are closer to your age, Dan, mid 40s, late 40s, I just constantly try to remind them, look, man, we're in a young person's game, and you got to do everything you can to look fit and look relevant and not come across sounding like you're an old fuddy duddy, because then you're just going to start losing work.
Robbie, how about you? Any, I mean, I know you're smaller grouping in that aspect, but
Right. Yeah. We have my daughter's 26, and for she's already killing it. My business partner's a few years younger than I am. He's starting to step up his dress a little bit better, sharing with them, to get more bookings. You can't look like a grandpa. And then other guys, 30 years old, and he does a great job at dressing himself. And so, like, once again, staying relevant, staying young, staying in tune with everything, and yeah, and not being trying to, like, for me, and I know this bothers Keith Kirkor, is like using the word bangers all the time or whatever. So I try not to use really old lingo, when talking to a bride, or just try, or new lingo. I mean, I just try to keep it like live, but not try to use too much terminology that would, they'd be like, oh, he's trying too hard.
and that was perfect segue. It was like you saw my notes. So the next piece I was going to ask is, when we're talking about how we talk, right? We're expected in certain ways to have certain conversations, but do you find yourself working on your vocabulary, working on your, your language and that kind of piece to fit a certain era, to fit a certain generation?
I think I do, but I also, going back to the same thing I said about fashion, it's got to feel comfortable for you. I've used terms that that are probably more popular for younger people, and as soon as it's come out of my mouth, I've said, I'm never saying that again. It just didn't sound natural to me. So yeah, I mean, like, bring the fire or something like that a lot of people might say. We just lost Cubby. um I did we lose Cubby?
Yeah, he just
Okay.
he froze up there for a bit, so he'll
Oh, so
come
he
back.
jumped off. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good to stay on top of things like that, but also don't force it, because I think you sound worse if you force something like that. Then you sound like the old guy trying to sound hip, but not pulling it off.
Exactly. It's got to be something that's normal. And I would say, this doesn't just translate to weddings, which I think sometimes we tend to focus on. Those of you that are in the school markets, you got to really watch that idea, right? Because I think you can fall into the trap of saying, well, I'm going to talk like, I'm going to use their language. I'm going to follow TikTok. I'm going to follow, the streaming services, and, and random young people's videos, without being creepy, to figure out how they're talking. Right. But here's the thing. They know you're not a teenager coming to them to
Right.
talk.
Right.
Right. So even if you're in your mid to late 20s, you start using their slang, you're going to hear other things said behind their back about you. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? Don't try to be them, right? You don't have to try to be that age. But also be aware of the language and the lingo in the slang that you might be using that is out of date.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, to use an extreme example, and I'm not going to get political here at all, but when Biden was running a couple of years ago, his tour bus said, "No more malarkey." And I was like, if you want to convince America that you're not the old guy running, that's not the term to use, because nobody in my generation uses the word malarkey. And I don't even know a lot of boomers that use that. But that to me was a perfect example of, if Joe Biden wanted to convince America that he's not as old as we think he is, that whoever came up with that catchphrase should have come up with something else.
Yeah, I don't, and that's the thing. Like, I still, I mean, we're not getting political, but it still baffles me that came from anywhere,
Right.
like around
That
people
somebody not
around
only
him.
approved that, but said, yeah, let's paint it on the side of a bus. That's how much we love that saying. Yeah, it was kind of beyond me.
But in the same respect, you got people talking, and here we are talking about it,
And he won the
2 years
election,
later.
or maybe. Who
Exactly.
knows? I don't
Yeah, we won't go there. All right, so leave that for your comments. I know.
That's right.
I'll tell you, there's so many times I want to jump on your comments just to have some fun, but I digress. So Cubby, when you dropped out, we were talking about, kind of avoiding some of that slang and lingo that might be a little bit or paint you in the wrong picture. Do you find yourself looking for ways to talk or ways to avoid certain things, or how do you know when to no longer use bangers like you referenced earlier?
I don't know. I just try to conversationally sell with my brides and grooms, not using too many like you said, as they kind of came at the end, it was like TikTok words or words that are trending. I just try to present myself as I would be presenting to their family. Very professional, using great words and analogy, but just not talking about bangers, because I'm not going to go in front of their guests and friends and relatives and be like, well, we're going to play a lot of bangers tonight. I see everybody on the dance floor, So I try to present myself in a sales consultation, as well as I think mostly people who are in sales consultations. Once they booked us, there's not much they can do. But mostly in my sales consultations, I try to just express my sincere meaning that we're going to take great care of them. We've got the experience. We're not going to embarrass you and your family. And you have great mic skills, and just try to keep them professional.
I think one of the best things that you can do is exactly as Cubby was saying in there is avoid that, or not avoid, but to stay in that professional realm, right? When we speak properly and we use that type of piece, it's kind of hard to distinguish whether we are just being formal, and speaking right, or whether we are a different age than we might be. When you take away the language or the slang that identifies our age, we now can be in a much larger window. So that is kind of something, thing. Day says I can't use the word lit correctly in a sentence. That's all right. Nobody can. And nobody should anymore.
That's a word I think I tried to use once, and I realized that I just can't do it. It doesn't sound natural coming out of my mouth. So I've never done it again. Yeah.
So I don't know, Mike, this, but in my other life here that I do, my Monday to Friday job, I'm a school teacher. And one of my coworkers was talking, I remember one time, every once in a while will update us on what the lingo is and what it means. And he will actually use it in class, almost as a way to just mess with his students. Like, he'll find out what it is and then he'll start throwing it in. So if you ever want to know the lingo of what is the really young generation at this point, at least is wanting to talk about, we could have some fun with that.
What age do you teach?
I'm high school. My students are 9th grade.
Okay. So, I mean, I would imagine that helps you stay young and relevant and in touch with a younger generation. Just the fact that you are with teenagers, all day long.
It definitely helps me. It ages me a lot. That's where the whiteness has come from. But no, it does allow me the opportunity to kind of have a little bit more pulse on certain things, like the artists that are around for maybe a splash in the pan, but I'm aware of what they are and where they came from. So if somebody throws something at me or it's a song that was on TikTok and it's suddenly popular for that hot minute, I've heard about it through the classroom, even before necessarily maybe it's brought to me in another venue. But so now here's the $1 million question. And I have my kind of answer tucked back in my head for a couple of example reasons, but is there a point where you should say, I'm too old to do this? And is there a magic idea or number that puts you into that position?
You mean where we self-determine that?
Yeah.
I don't even know that this has to do with age, but I've made a promise to myself and to my clients, not that I've ever shared this with them, that I will stop doing this when I lose my passion for it. And I think everyone in this industry should promise that, even if it's just internal, because I think there are some people, and I know of some people who are still kind of doing this because the money is still too good to give up, but they've lost their passion and they have a short fuse with their clients because they don't love their clients anymore. They don't have a passion for the business. So to me, it's more about that than it will be about age. I figure the clients will let me know once I get too old, because I'll just stop getting booked.
Very good. Cubby, what do you think?
Yeah, I never thought of an age like Mike, I guess. Like, I'd almost have to agree with him. When I dread going out to a wedding, I'm like, oh, I gotta go do this again. I think it's time to hang up the headphones. Yeah, he nailed it on the head. When they stop booking they pretty much say themselves. I mean, you're no longer relevant. You're no longer, they no longer want you. So then you kind of go into more of a management, just hiring DJs and managing a company.
And I think, and that could be another direction that we go in and talk about, but I think we'll digress and say that for another time. The idea of, being that management figure, does that then play, does your age have to factor in and how you present yourself? Does it have to factor in as much? So we'll save that for another show. But when I think about this, I think about, two gentlemen in particular, and one will probably smack me upside the head the next time I see him and then give me a hug afterwards because he loves me. But one would be John Ross, who is a fantastic gentleman. If you guys do not know him, Johnny, you are missing out, because this guy is doing more at his age than I think I've done in my entire life combined. And he's fantastic. And here's the great thing. And it kind of what Mike and Cubby both said, there's not necessarily an age. It's your clients who are going to really kind of tell you that you're not doing the age thing right. But if you can sell that aspect of like what Johnny does, you're not going to come across as the old guy, or they're not going to care that you look older than them, or that you're the same age as their parents, or whatever might be the case, because they're looking at the product you're putting out more than they are the age that comes with it. You've established yourself to know that, you're not playing, big band music all night long because that's how old you are or something. You don't have to worry about that if you can constantly stay up. And then the other person that I, think of this, and this guy is the busiest man in all of show business that there is. And I'm talking about Sean Big Daddy McKee, who is just absolutely, he's the one that would probably smack me upside the head and then give me a big hug. But he again is one of those that is, he does more events than there are days in a year. And yet still has time to be able to be a grandfather and to be a dad and to be all those wonderful things and friends and call everybody. Like I said, I don't know how he has enough hours of the day, but it's how we handle what we have, and it's how you handle the position that you are. So your age doesn't necessarily have to be a detriment. Even looking like the old guy doesn't necessarily have to be the detriment if you find a way to make it work. And even look at and we had this comment in the chat maybe last week or the week before. Somebody asked, when one of the nights we were doing the Q&A, when is too old to start DJing? I don't think there is such a thing either. If you think about, what was it, 10 years ago, there was the one, I can remember the guy, the video, was an older gentleman. He was like in a nightclub and he had like the curly hair.
Yep.
And he's just like,
Yeah.
Doing that. If you carry that kind of energy, people aren't going to care that you, I don't know how old the gentleman was, but he was definitely then older than all three of us. So, keep that in mind. Well, yeah. So any last tips, any last pieces of advice either of you'd like to throw in as we get ready to kind of wrap this up here?
Can I throw one in?
Absolutely.
Andy,
Please
I
do.
didn't know if you had one. You kind of touched on it a little bit, Dan, but I think it's worth revisiting and really emphasizing, and that is knowledge of music. I hear too many DJs around my age or even younger than me who make public comments like, oh, all new music sucks, and I don't know who Doja Cat is or whatever. And I mean, to me, it's a fairly simple thing to do, to look at the charts every week and to listen to songs that come out, and to to preview songs. And if you follow me online, I usually make regular mixes of new music. I do that mainly so that I can stay on top of the new music and can show clients, yeah, here's my winter mix of new stuff. So I think that's something that, I heard the phrase or the saying, you don't stop listening to new music when you get old when you stop listening to new music. And I think there's too many DJs that just have leaned into that and said, yeah, all new music sucks, I'm not going to bother learning it. And I just think that's a crucial mistake.
While you're on that topic real quick here, before we switch over to Cubby and that, I was watching the Today Show today and they had Grandmaster Flash on, and they were talking because it was the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and there's a new museum that's opening in Brooklyn, and they got talking to him, and it was funny because the interviewer was trying to get him to say that today's music sucks. Like he was like trying to coax him into saying that. And he's like, considering the fact that you started this, like that you really were like the beginner piece to this genre, you know, do you feel, something about the way music has become today? And his response was, music has to change, right? If it was always the same thing it always was, it becomes stagnant. So it has to become a living thing that changes as it goes. And it will go through highs and it will go through lows, but it will continue to evolve and it will continue to change. So you may find, exactly as Mike said, that you don't like a certain style maybe as much as you did 10 years ago. That doesn't mean what's out now sucks. It just means it's different and it's evolving. And look for those ways to make it yours.
Because I guarantee whatever generation was yours, the people older than you said your music sucked. Like I came of age in the 80s and the MTV generation, everything else. I guarantee my parents heard some of that and saw some of the videos and thought, oh, music just isn't the same as it used to be and everything else. So all you're doing is sounding like an old person as soon as you let those words out of your mouth.
Yeah. And also, if you're thinking, keep it in your head, don't put them online because people are going to find it.
Well, and also once you say something, you start convincing yourself of that.
Mhm.
So the more you verbalize that thought, and listen, if you're not a DJ, I've got plenty of friends my age who aren't in my industry. They have the luxury to say, yeah, new music sucks, but I don't have that luxury. I don't even want to think that thought.
It's good. Good. Cubby, how about you? Any last second ideas here?
That was gold. Sign up to Mike Walter and listen to his mixes that he does. I love to listen to him. Like this one's out and his November mixes, and haven't seen one in a while, so it might be time for you to do one. I heard Rihanna's dropping an album after the Super Bowl, so I can't wait to see what you pick out of there. But yeah, I just think challenge yourself, do some young events. Don't just take the easy ones. Take some that might challenge you as a DJ, and maybe do those middle school dances, or maybe do father-daughter dances on an off night like a Friday, or during the off season. For me right now, father-daughter dances are huge, and learn that new music. And that way, when the wedding season comes around, you're able to bring those new music in and blend them in well, and just stay, like Mike said, stay on top of the charts. There's some great DJs that you can follow that do that as well. Mike's the top. I say Jim Sharon does a really good job on nailing new music and following charts, and like watch out for this one, and giving DJs hints as well. So just stay active and try to stay, like Mike said, stay young. Listen to new music.
Definitely. And I think, you also you just kind of hit on something. Watching the ones that are industry leaders that are going against the curve of their age, right? When we look at all these mentors, there are a lot of DJs that we look up to that you probably would be surprised they're the age that they are. And even think of the national type of club DJs are often much older than you'd ever expect them to be. So sometimes we think it's always just a young person's game, and that's not necessarily the case. And so looking for those ways to kind of see the things that they're doing also, and take some of those subtle cues and some of those pieces and implementing them into what you're doing is gonna help. But again, making it what you do, don't just take and steal, but doing it in such a way that, oh, I see that they, consistently work out, or I see that they're consistently dressing themselves in a certain way, or when I hear them speak, I don't hear this, or I always hear this. Looking for those ways that you can then take and make into who you are and the piece that you are. And one disclaimer I should have given in this very, very beginning of the night, keep in mind that we are three guys here trying to give our statements and our ideas. Ladies, it was not meant to misrepresent you. If you have great ideas, I would love for you to throw them into the comments to this, to send them to John and I, Cubby, myself, even Mike, and he'll pass them along to us. And we'd be more than happy to share out those ideas that you have to help those other ladies that are in that same position. Because as we talked about ties and suits and different things and that we do, that may or may not fit what you're looking for an outfit. So by all means, and I don't mean just outfits, but please share those ideas because we want to help everybody to be able to understand to be better for what they are and that they're no longer that old person. So, well, Mike, Cubby, thank you very much for taking time out of your night to join us. Do want to let everybody know coming up next, DJNTV.com/chill room. That is where Howie and the guys are going to be hanging with Howie, your opportunity to jump in, hear what they're talking about. Then once that's done, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, they'll shut off the recording. And then it's just have at it and enjoy some great conversation all night long if you do well. Next week, John will be back. Have yourself a great one. We'll see you next time.